So anyone ever feel like that? That you were inside out, outside looking in? Did you ever surprise yourself by what you saw? Anyone out there like surprises? I do, most of the time. So today's message is, know thyself. You may be surprised. This past Wednesday was Ash Wednesday. And that's not something that we here in this Unity community do much about. But what we know about the Lenten season and it having begun is that it's the opportunity for, self-awareness and self-improvement. Of course, New Thought has a different spin on Lent than traditional communities do. And although Lent is a church institution, it's really not mentioned in the Bible, the Unity textbook as we like to refer to it. And even though it's not mentioned, it is a church-created day. It still is a very sound spiritual practice. I mean, consider it. 40 days of introspection, reflection, meditation, prayer, and fasting before the feast of Easter. In New Thought, the fasting is not about giving up chocolate or some other habit, but it's about fasting from behaviors and practices, thoughts that deny us or separate us from our own divinity and knowing our divine nature. To feast on the things of spirit after the fast, like reaching for a raised consciousness of Christ-like behaviors. Know thyself. And I say, you may be surprised. The most important study is our own mind. Not only the intellectual mind, but the spiritual mind, is what Charles Fillmore, of course, one of our Unity co-founders, said. Know thyself is an ancient Greek saying, aphorism, and it's an inspiration and an inscription that is on the temple of Apollo at Delphi. Charles Fillmore told us this in Keep a True Lent. He said that we should have it inscribed, the saying, know thyself. We should have it inscribed on our own temples. We should have it inscribed over the door of our mind. He reminds us, know thyself. Know who and what you are, where you came from, what you're doing here, and where you are going. Now, I don't think he meant that I am Jake and Nancy's daughter, and that I'm a minister, and that my zip code is 8600, whatever that is. It is beyond the ordinary self-knowledge that he's referencing. That ordinary self-knowledge that typically is about personality. Throw in a little ego and it's not only what we think we are, but who we think we are. We're talking about the genuine self-knowledge that is about our Christ selves. We gain our quest for self-knowledge, according to Paul Hesselbeck in Heart-Centered Metaphysics, by realizing that the source of all wisdom is within the spectrum of our own consciousness. Now let me say that again. By realizing that the source of all wisdom, like we talked about last week, is within the spectrum of our own consciousness, this is knowing thyself. And this relates to Lent how? Well, thank you for asking. Lent, in its traditional sense, probably not so much does this relate to that. However, in metaphysical terms, as we've spoken about earlier, or New Thought, or Unity Speak, whatever you want to reference it as, it is the beliefs, the words, and the behaviors we relinquish our thoughts that stand in the way, that keep us from living more peacefully, more authentically, with meaning and with purpose. As we mentioned before, fasting is an invitation to fast from behavior practices and thoughts that deny us and separate us from our divine nature. Charles Fillmore strongly encourages this way of being. He reminds us that all things are in the consciousness, and you have to learn to separate the erroneous from the true, the darkness from the light. And we keep doing this, he tells us, until we are aware of the perfect divine child of God that we are, and we manifest in our lives accordingly. That makes fasting a whole different gig, doesn't it? And feasting? Oh, well, feasting, on the other hand, is the daily practice of engaging in thinking and ways of being that foster peace and gratitude and appreciation. We feast upon the thoughts that feed our divine nature. We touch on compassion. We experience personal growth and transformation and being of service to others. Anyone up for a smorgasbord like that? Quite a feast. The great work of your life that you can choose, Paul Hasselbeck tells us, is that each individual is the perfection of consciousness through individual evolution. This is the seed that Ryan mentioned and reminded us to plant only love. This is the seed in the collective consciousness. By divine mind, know that. Know thyself and know that. By watching our consciousness and its impulses and its desires, just like a chemist watching their solutions, we form our own consciousness from the elements of God mind. This is the Christ consciousness that we talk about. And you may surprise yourself at how deep that runs and how fulfilling that can be. Fun to be surprised like that, isn't it? And as we know, we are only, and only are we, responsible for the results of this. Know your own self. It is in this practice, it's in this commitment to unfold our spiritual potential, knowing oneself, that the promise of fulfillment can be found. Anyone looking for that? What a nice surprise to find that in your life. The next 40 days, I encourage you to turn from the simple act of giving up things, fasting from those things that separate you from your divinity, to a more positive commitment of taking up the practice of high-level thinking, forming habits of reaching for the highest point of view in all your dealings, in all your efforts. I am guessing you will surprise yourself. Namaste, my friends.